Good afternoon, everybody. This is Carol from the First Presbyterian Church here in Ulysses, and we are reading The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe by C.W. Lewis, and we are on chapter 13. Before this, I hope you got to see the trailer and you got to see some of the characters and get to know the children, which I think will help along with the story. And of course, Freddie's here with us today, so let's get on with the reading. Chapter 13, Deep Magic from the Dawn of Time. Now we must go back to Edmund, where he had been made to walk further than he had ever known that anybody could walk. The witch at last halted in the dark valley, all overshadowed with fir trees and yew trees. Edmund simply sank down and lay his face, doing nothing at all, and not even caring what was going to happen next, provided they would let him just lie still. He was too tired even to notice how hungry and thirsty he was. The witch and the dwarf were talking close beside him in a very low tones. "No," said the dwarf, "it is no use now, O Queen. They must have reached the stone table by now." "Perhaps the wolf will smell us out and bring us news," said the witch. "It cannot be good news if he does," said the dwarf. "Four thrones in Cair Paravel," said the witch. "How if only three were filled? That would not fulfill the prophecy." "What difference would that make now that he is here?" said the dwarf. He did not dare, not even now, to mention the name of Aslan to his mistress. "He may not stay long, and then we would fall upon the three at Caviar," said the wicked witch. "Yes, it might be better," said the dwarf, "to keep this one," and he kicked Edmund, "for bargaining with." "Yes, and then have him rescued?" said the witch scornfully. "Then," said the dwarf, "we had better do what we had to do all now." "I would like to have done it on the stone table itself," said the witch. "That is the proper place. That is where it has always been done." "It will be a long time now before the stone table can again be put to its proper use," said the dwarf. "True," said the witch, and then, "Well, I will begin." At the moment, with a rush and a snarl, a wolf rushed up upon them. "I have seen them. They are all at the stone table with him. They have killed my captain, Faintoft. I have hidden in the thickets and saw it all. One of the sons of Adam killed him. Fly, fly." "No," said the witch. "There need be no flying. Go quickly. Summon all your people to meet me here as speedily as they can. Call all the giants, all the werewolves, and the spirits of the trees who are on my side. Call the Gowls and the Boogles, call the Gorgs and the Minotaurs, call the Cruels and the Hags and the Spectres, and the people of the toadstools. We will fight. What? Have I not still? My wand? Will not my ranks turn into stone even as they come? Be off quickly. I have a little thing to finish here while you are away." The great brute bowed his head, turned and galloped away. "Now," she said, "we have no table, but let me see. We had better put it against the trunk of a tree. Edmund found himself being ruffled by force to his feet. Then the dwarf set him with his back against the tree and bound him fast. He saw the witch take off her outer mantle. Her arms were bare underneath it and terribly white. Because they were so very white, he could not see much else. It was so dark in this valley under the dark trees. "Prepare the victim," said the witch, and the dwarf undid Edmund's collar and folded back his shirt at its neck. Then he took Edmund's hair and pulled his head back so that he had to raise his chin. After that, Edmund heard a strange noise. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. For a moment, he couldn't think of what it was. Oh, then he realized it was the sound of a knife being sharpened. At that very moment, he heard loud shouts from every direction, a drumming of hoofs and a beating of wings, and a scream from the witch. Confusion all around him, and then he found that he was being untied. Strong arms were around him, and he heard a big, kind voice saying things like, "Let him lie down. Give him some wine. Drink this. Steady now. You'll be all right in a minute." Then he heard the voice of people who were talking not to him, but to one another. And they were saying things like, "Who's got the witch? I thought you had her. I didn't see her after I knocked the knife out of her hand. I was after the dwarf. Do you mean to say she's escaped? A chap didn't mind everything at once. What's that? Oh, sorry. It's only a stump." But just as this point, Edmund went off and fell faint, realizing that he almost was killed, but he's still alive. Presently, the unicorns and deers and birds, and of course there were a rescue party which Aslan had sent in the last chapter, all set off to go back to the stone table, carrying Edmund with them. But if they could have seen what had happened in the valley after they had gone, I think they might have been surprised. It was perfectly still, and presently the moon grew bright. If you had been there, you would have seen the moonlight shining on the old tree stump and the fair-sized boulder. But if you had gone on looking, you would gradually have begun to think that there was something odd about the stump and the boulder. And next, you would have thought the stump did look really remarkably like a little fat man crouching on the table. And if you had watched long enough, you would have seen the stump walk across to the boulder, and the boulder sit up and begin talking to the stump. For in reality, the stump and the boulder was simply the witch and the dwarf. For it was part of her magic that she could still make things look like what they weren't, and she had the presence of mind to do so at the very moment when the knife was knocked out of her hand. She had kept hold of her wand also, so it had been kept safe too. Then the other children woke up. Next morning, they had been sleeping on a pile of cushions in the pavilion. The first thing they heard was from Mrs. Beaver was that their brother had been rescued and brought into camp late last night, and was at that very moment talking to Aslan. As soon as they had breakfast, they all went out, and there they saw Aslan and Edmund walking and talking together in the dews of the grass, apart from the rest of the court. There is no need to tell you, and no one ever heard what Aslan was saying, but it was a conversation which Edmund never forgot. And as the others drew nearer, Aslan turned to meet them, bringing Edmund with him. "Here is your brother," he said, "and there is no need to talk to him about what has happened in the palace." Edmund shook his hands with each of the others and said to each of them in turn, "I am sorry." And everyone said, "That's all right." And everyone wanted very hard to say something which would make it quite clear that they were all friends again. Something ordinary, something natural. But of course no one could think of anything to say. But before they had time to feel really awkward, one of the leopards approached Aslan and said, "Sire, there is a message from the enemy who craves audience." "Let him approach," said Aslan. The leopard went away and soon returned, leading the witch's dwarf. "What is your message, son of Earth?" asked Aslan. "The Queen of Narnia, the Empress of Long Islands, desire a safe conduct to come and speak with you," he said, "on a matter which is as much of your advantage as it is to hers." "Queen of Narnia, indeed," said Mr. Beaver. "Of all the cheap peace beaver," said Aslan. "All names will soon be restored to their proper owners. In the meantime, we will not dispute about noises. Tell your mistress, son of Earth, that I grant her safe conduct on condition that she leaves her wand behind her at the great oak." This was agreed to, and the two leopards went back with their dwarf to see the conditions were properly carried out. "But supposing she turns the two leopards into stone?" whispered Lucy to Peter. "I think the same thing occurred to the leopards themselves. At any rate, as they walked off, their fur was still standing up on their backs, and their tails were bristling like a cat when it sees a strange dog." "It'll be all right," whispered Peter in reply. "He won't send them. He wouldn't have sent them if they weren't." A few minutes later, the witch herself walked out onto the top of the hill and came straight across and stood before Aslan. The three children, who had not seen her before, felt shudders running down their backs at the sight of her face, and there were low growls among all the animals present. Though it was a bright sunshine day, everyone felt suddenly cold. The only two people present who seemed to be quite at ease were Aslan and the witch. It was the oddest thing to see those two faces, the golden face and the dreaded white face, so close together. Not that the witch looked Aslan exactly in the eyes. Mrs. Beaver particularly noticed this. "You have a traitor here, Aslan," said the witch. Of course, everyone present knew that she meant Edmund. But Edmund had got past thinking about himself after all he'd been through, and after the talk he had this morning, he just went on looking at Aslan. It didn't seem to matter what the witch said. "Well," said Aslan, "his defenses was not against you." "Have you forgotten the deep magic?" asked the witch. "Let us say I have forgotten it," answered Aslan gravely. "Tell us about that deep dark magic." "Tell you?" said the witch, her voice growling suddenly, shrilling. "Tell you what is written on the very table of the stone which stands behind us? Tell you what is written in letters deep as a spear, is long as a trunk of the world of the ash tree? Tell you what is engraved in the scepter of the empire behind the sea? You at least know the magic which the empire put into Narnia. at the very beginning, you know that every traitor belongs to me as my lawful prey, and that for every treachery I have a right to kill. Oh, said Mr. Beaver, so that's how you came to imagine yourself a queen, because you were the Emperor's hangman. I see. Peace, Beaver, said Aslan, with a very low growl. And so, continued the witch, that human creature is mine. His life is forfeited to me. His blood is in my property. Come and take it then, said the bull, with a man's head, as he greeted bowing the voice. Fool, said the witch with a strange smile that was almost a snarl, do you really think your master can rob me of my rights by mere force? He knows the deep magic better than that. He knows that unless I have the blood, as the law says, all Narnia will be overturned and perished in fire and water. It is very true, said Aslan. I do not deny it. Oh, Aslan, Mr. Susan, in the Lion's Ear, can't we, can't we do something about the deep magic? Isn't there something that you can work against it? Work against the Emperor's magic, said Aslan, looking at her with something like a frown on his face, and nobody ever made that question to him again. Edmund was on the other side of Aslan, looking all the time in Aslan's face. He felt a choking feeling and wondered if he ought not to say something. But a moment later, he felt that he was not expected to do anything except to wait and to do what he was told. Fall back, all of you, said Aslan, and I will talk to the witch alone. They all obeyed. It was a terrible time like this, waiting and wondering while the lion and the witch talked earnestly together in low voices. Lucy said, "Oh, Edmund," and began to cry. Peter stood with his back to the others, looking out at the distant sea. The beavers stood holding each other's paws, with their heads bowed. The centrines stomped uneasily with their hoofs, but everyone became perfectly still in the end, so that you noticed even a small sound, like a bumblebee flying past, or birds in the forest down below them, and the wind rustling in the leaves. And still the talk between Aslan and the White Witch went on. At last they heard Aslan's voice. "You can all come back," he said. "I have settled the matter. She has renounced the claim of your brother's blood. And all over the hill there you will notice, as if everyone has been holding his breath and had now begun breathing again, and then a murmur of talk. They began to come back to Aslan's throne. The witch was turning away, with a look of fierce joy on her face, when she stopped and said, "But how do I know this promise will be kept?" "Whoa!" roared Aslan, half rising from his throne, and his great mouth opening wider and wider, and the roar grew louder and louder, and the witch, after staring for a moment with her lips wide apart, pricked up her skirt and fairly ran out for her life. That is the end. Thank you, and I hope seeing the trailer helped you visualize the characters. Have a great week.